And yeah, thank you so much, Elias, for joining me today. I'm really excited to speak to you about this because mitochondria and the effect it has on health is a huge part of my health journey. So let's start with, why do you call this the new paradigm to health?
Well, first of all, Anna, thank you very much indeed for having me on. I'm very excited to talk about this. It's changed my life. It's my absolute passion. And you're absolutely right. This is very definitely a new paradigm to healing. If you think about it, old paradigm, what we're all used to is going to our doctors, going to our health practitioners, and we go with perhaps a label, or we go to our specialists and we go, there's a problem, I don't know what's going on, and they give you a label. And if they're a half decent practitioner, they'll give you some treatment, they might give you some nutraceuticals, they might give you something pharmaceutical, you might have some acupuncture, or you might have some homeopathy. You'll have lots of wonderful things to support that area. And what tends to happen is after a period of time, maybe 3 to 6 months, you think you're back on your mojo, you're great, you stop taking the intervention because you believe you're healed. And then with a few months after that, things start to slide again and you go back to square one. And the reason for that is that you treated a symptom. The label was just a symptom of the body having a lack of power to run that resource. And the new paradigm is don't treat labels, just give the body the power it needs. Now, let me explain that. When you're 16, you are invincible, or we hope you remember being invincible. We hope you remember partying and drinking and getting up to all sorts of naughty things and maybe doing some of that. And you got away with it because your body created more power than it will ever create again. And the reason for this is your body creates carnosine, which regenerates your mitochondria at a level that you will never have again post 16. When you get to 25, the relatives all start to say, they were such a wild child, they're so much nicer to be around now, they've calmed down. Well, the only reason they started to calm down is the body's ability to create carnosine is now falling away. When you get to 30s, you think you're mature, you're having babies, you're getting a mortgage, you're getting married. No, I'm afraid you're just calming down, you have less carnosine, so your behavior is, in quotes, more mature. And then when you hit your 40s, everybody tells you they're tired. And they're telling you they're tired for two reasons. One, you have a lot less carnosine in your system to regenerate the body than you did at 16. And two, when you're from about your early 30s, but very noticeably by the time you hit 40, your body's ability to produce CoQ10 has also fallen off a cliff. And CoQ10 is required for all of your cardiovascular disorders. It's also required synergistically and biochemically by carnosine to give it the power to regenerate you. So effectively, everything is sliding, and that's why in your 40s you feel tired, because things are just not the same. You're not having the oomph from the Q10 in your body, and you're not getting the oomph from the regeneration from the carnosine. And when you hit 50, you have less than half the power in your body than you did at 16. And this is because you have less than half the carnosine than you did at 16. So, new paradigm, don't treat labels. Start off by giving the body the power it needs. And then it has the resources to run all of your system to the potential that you have. And this is why I say, let's start a new paradigm. Let's go to the cause, which is the lack of power. It's a lack of mitochondria. And let's nourish that and see what it can do. The body's incredibly intelligent. It knows far better than we do what it requires. So give it the resources, stand back, and let's see what happens.
And how did you discover this?
Well, that's a story in itself. A very dear friend of mine, a practitioner, told me about this and said, it does this, and it does this, and it does this. And my BS monitor went off because I don't believe anything can do all of those things and be brilliant. And being the mother of a child on the spectrum, I'm very sensitive to when people tell me stuff that's too good to be true. And I ignored it. And he rang me again 3 months later and said, Lilies, you've done absolutely nothing about it. You need to come and have a look at this. And I said, well, I just don't believe you. And he said, come, I will show you. So for me to come, it was putting my son in the car, who was 16 at the time. Body was pretty good, but mentally the lights went on and nobody was at home. Mm-hmm. And it's a 3 to 4 hour journey to get to him. So it's a big effort to do this. and to come back again. So I got there, and he did something called a heart rate variability test. And it was amazing because the heart rate variability test measures the stress on the body, it measures the autonomic nervous system, and essentially it says, how much power do you have, where is it going, and what is it doing? And for the first time, I understood why my son's brain wasn't working properly. And the reason was there was no power going there. All the power was going in his sympathetic, so cardiovascular systems, cellular oxygen. There was a bit of power going into his body, so in the parasympathetic, resting, digesting, and healing, but virtually nothing going upstairs. And that just made the biggest load of sense to me. The test was done on myself and showed that I was walking around with my knuckles on the floor, which I wouldn't have wanted to admit to anybody at that time, but I was. Went away, he gave me the very special mitochondrial supplements, and within weeks I felt different, but more importantly, my son was doing things he'd never done before. He was thinking differently, he was doing things without being told, and I went, my Lord, his brain is suddenly kicking in. And when we went back 8 weeks later and did the test again, there it was on the report, brain function, or the VLF as we call it, the limbic system, had a lot more power in it. That's all his body needed, was the power to respond. And his journey has been so different. He's been on it for about 4 years now, and he's doing and saying things I never dreamed that we would be able to achieve. So it's been life-changing in my family.
Do you mind sharing what those things he's capable of doing now are? Because I know a lot of connections I've got on Facebook are parents with autistic children, so they might want to hear what's happened for him.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a simple thing that happened. So he's able to cook his own breakfast. We have an Argus, so there's no turning on of fuel or anything like that, gas sort of stuff. And he took some sausages out one morning, and then he was the only person in the kitchen. He's quite capable of doing this on his own, and it's fine. And he said to us when we came down, oh, I didn't use these sausages because they smelt funny. I've used these. Well,
wow.
That's common sense. You know, common sense ain't that common. He could work that out. It's stuff like, it's cold outside, so he'll actually put a coat on.
Wow.
He is now saying he'd like to drive a car one day. He's talking about perhaps having a girlfriend. He goes and catches a bus on his own to college.
This is big stuff.
Oh, it's huge. It's life-changing on so many levels. And he's doing something that's completely normal in that he's now trying to lie.
Awesome.
And that takes, you have to think about lying, you have to get your story right. You have to keep a straight face, which he can't do. But these are normal things, and he can have a joke and he can see stuff that we've never had before. And so it's huge, it's massive, and it kind of puts us more into the normal category.
And I can imagine, because you know you've been searching for years, haven't you, with things of how to help him. And what did you try over the years, and you know, compared to what is happening with the mitochondria stuff, what was the difference or the sort of negative aspects of what you saw with the other things that you tried?
It's been my life's work. I've never stopped. As many parents of autistic children, we're always looking for the next thing. And I'm only loyal to stuff that works. And if I find something better, I'm on it. I have done the original thought, which became EFT. We've done electronic gem therapy. We've done all the biomedical stuff, autonomic response testing. I have done bioresonance work. I've done magnetic therapy.
Wow.
I've done chelation. I've tried all sorts of supplements. I've tried all sorts of remedies. We've done lots of manual work years ago. And I think there's a time, there is no one thing that fixes everything. And as a parent, I've learned that. And as a parent with an autistic child, it is a journey. And it is a long journey. And I'm sorry to say that for people who are new on the spectrum, but it is a journey, and there is no quick fix to this. It's gradual. The body is changing and evolving the whole time, and what we do is right at the time until we find something else that feels right. And as a mother, and I always say this to my patients or to my parents, inherently what I'm saying must feel right to you. You know your child better than anybody. And I can only offer the solutions that I have at the moment, that are the very latest that I've come across, but it has to inherently feel right. And some of the stuff I do is utterly brilliant for some people. I'm not the expert in all of this, but there are other experts out there who have different fields of interest who also offer amazing things. And it's about what's right at the time for your child. And the carnosine and the mitochondrial protocols have been utterly life-changing for us. I do work with a lot of autistic children and parents. It has been utterly life-changing for a lot of those. But for some, it doesn't work. And as I say, it's different strokes for different folks, but we are able to help a lot of people with this. I mean, one child, I'll never forget them. I'd been working with this family for about 3 or 4 years, and he had never spoken. They had not slept in since he was born, basically. And he walked in, having started the carnosine and the mitochondrial stuff, after a 3-month break, and he walked straight in the door and went, "Hello, Lilius," and I nearly fell off my perch. And I said to parents, "What happened?" And they just said he started coming out with the words. And what was difficult for them was because he'd never spoken, they were talking to him in a way that was very childlike. He was 7 or 8 at this stage, and he was talking in a way that was very age appropriate. So this is a cautionary tale that I say to many parents out there: just because your child can't speak, don't think he's at that baby stage. He probably understands everything.
A lot, yeah.
Very, very distressing for a child not to be able to communicate. Actually, I've got this. Don't treat me like a 2-year-old. So,
and a lot of parents with autistic children, are so worried because they don't see much actually helping. And for me personally, even though I've never had a diagnosis of autism, but I had what I knew was a failure to heal, and that I tried so many things over the years, loads of different herbs, different diets, took lots of supplements and things, and they would never do a scrap of difference to me. I did have success with the zeolite. It helped to take out some mercury, and that was quite life-changing for me. But I still had massive issues with insomnia. I had a terrible anxiety, and I just didn't have any energy. I felt like I was 80 when I was I've not been well my whole life, let's face it. My earliest memory of knowing that something was wrong was when I was 12, and I can link it back to a lot of stress caused by an unhappy childhood and toxic exposure as well. And then when I learned all about this, I started looking into what was wrong with people like me who had so-called autoimmune disorders. But for me, it wasn't until I had a huge turning point with actually feeling a lot more energetic and having, less of a crazy mental state, was when I discovered the formula that you have. So I'm really happy to be talking about this because it's been a passion of mine for about 10 years. And I've learned a lot through my own experience with this, because when I had that first heart rate variability test, I was able to prove that I had issues with my heart, because I knew I did, because I used to get funny heartbeats, and several times I almost passed out whilst sitting down, which was weird. So I knew that I had things wrong with me, but whenever I went to have a normal test, I had an ECG test and it was completely clear, and I had a brain scan that was completely clear, yet I knew that the way my brain was functioning was not okay at all. And when I had that first heart rate variability test, I had the proof that said I have no energy in my body and everything was out of whack. And it was the first time that I had confirmation of this is not just in my head, it is real. And when I understood what the test tests and how the brain is supposed to give messages to the body, and the body's supposed to listen to those messages and then go and do its job and heal, and the fact that everything was so chaotic for me was why they weren't sort of connecting together with the receptor sites. So yeah, what I experience is in a way similar to kids with autism and other health conditions where people have chronic fatigue and just feel like they're constantly getting tired all the time. So how about we speak about what carnosine is and why the carnosine in the supplements that you've got isn't the same?
That's a very good question. But first of all, I just want to pick up on one of the things that you've been saying. All of the symptoms that you have described are classic mitochondrial dysfunction. The body didn't have enough resources to heal. And so all of your chronic fatigues, your fibromyalgias, your MEs, they are ill for years. And if we can just give the body the power it needs to respond, then all of that can change. They simply don't have the resources. And this is why I'm passionate about what we do here. So carnosine is a dipeptide. It is naturally found in the body. And the amount you have in your body very much depends on your age, on your gender, and it is stored in the body in the places where we need it the most. So if you think about it's in the heart, it's in the brain, and it's in the muscles. And as we get older, what are the areas that break down the quickest? Our muscles become less vital, our brain becomes perhaps a little more adult as we get older, and our heart lets us down. So this is really, really important. So you can see that carnosine is stored where you need it the most, where you need it the most. The problem is it has a very, very poor absorption rate. You'll only get about 10% of the carnosine that you need from your food, and that is obviously from meat. So there is a problem there. Now, the carnosine that you buy over the counter is very good. It stays in the body for an hour and a half to 2 hours, which means it doesn't get a chance to do all the most amazing things that it can do. I mean, carnosine is the greatest buffer of lactic acid in the body. It's definitely the athlete's friend. It chelates heavy metals. It scavenges free radicals. It inhibits protein carbonylation. It inhibits aldehydes. I mean, the list goes on, and it's massively, massively neuroprotective. But staying in the body for an hour and a half to 2 hours means it's not going to achieve much. So some scientists got together. It was their life's work. It took them 15 years to enable the carnosine to stay in the body for up to 12 hours. And the reason that carnosine stays in the body for only an hour and a half to 2 hours is that we have an enzyme called carnosinase that is in the blood. And the carnosinase basically breaks down carnosine on contact. So that's why it doesn't stay in the body for very long. So our very special carnosine extra stays in the body for up to 12 hours. And this has been clinically proven. And this is why we're so excited. So this gives you the potential to regenerate at a level that your years of age wouldn't normally allow. So instead of getting to 40s and 50s and going, I'm so tired, and you run along, you young things, and party, and I'm just have a little nap. It's hell no. I'm going to come and join you because I'm regenerating, so I can. I don't need to collapse in a heap at the end of the day. I can wake up in the morning feeling invigorated and ready to go without going, actually, I want to hit the snooze button 3 times on the alarm clock. So this is what happens when you regenerate. You've got the energy to get up and go. You've got the energy to repair your body. And it can only happen if the carnosine stays in the body for the amount of time that is meaningful to make that repair and regeneration.
And what do you think happens to people to have a lack of carnosine?
It's a natural process. As if you think about most things, we're in our most vital prime when we are of childbearing age. So years ago, you would be having children in your late teens. And then if you look at the basic tribes, they have children very, very young, and they don't live to a great age because of our industrial changes, our cleanliness, the science, the way we live. We don't have to hunt and gather our food; it's provided for us. We're living longer, but we're living well, and I don't want to spend the last 20 years of my life on a decline and aches and pains and moans and the brain failing me. I want my brain and my body to be absolutely the best potential it can be. And that can only happen if we have the resources. And so by supplementing the carnosine, the Q10, and supporting the immune system, then we can have that vitality and we can have that quality of life to our last breath, hopefully.
Now, there are a lot of supplements out there, and, you know, they come with glowing sort of marketing words about what they do, and I think there's a lot on the market that are absolute rubbish. So how can you stand behind what you've got and say that it works?
This is one of the reasons I stand here so confidently, is the supplements have been tested through the University of Novi Sad, and they've got clinical trials that have happened. One of the trials was on MS, which we're so excited about, and they were able to show when the mice had been sacrificed that the carnosine was able to protect the myelin sheath, and there was a great deal less inflammation in the brain in those areas. So we've actually had stories from patients who were in wheelchairs with MS who were beginning to use their sticks again and get out of their wheelchairs.
That's amazing. And some of it, some of the
very, very
the testimonials were within days and weeks.
Yeah. If people are sensitive, they notice a difference quite quickly. We have other research where they gave a group of rats, so they had their what are the rats that don't have the
placebo? Placebo, yeah.
Placebo, that's right, that's the one. And the ones that had the carnosine. And all they did is they said to the two groups were just given the opportunity to move around their cages freely. They had all the toys that most rats like and wheels to run on, and they measured them every 6 months every 6 minutes over a period of 3 months, which is 7 years for or a rat rather. And what they discovered is that the rats who enjoyed eating the carnosine were 40% more active than the rats that didn't.
That's a lot.
And that's, yeah, I mean, I stand here, I'm just shy of 58. I run circuits around people who are 10, 15 years younger than me. I can go long, I feel like an ever-ready battery because I have enough regeneration in my body. It's not a problem. I can get up early. I've got a house full of young men at the moment. I've got 3 boys, and we're all being shot in at the moment. So it's chaos at times. And it's not a problem. I'm trying to run a practice. We're doing stuff online. We're doing stuff, like this. Lots of balls in the air. It's not a problem. And when you have the carnosine, it gives the body the ability to respond to stress and not to react. And that's massive. So if you've got the carnosine in your system, and little Johnny walks in the door and he's just taken a marker pen and put it all over the walls, you can respond to that situation instead of growling at him and, creating something that you rather regret later. And that's what's beautiful about it. It takes the stress off the system for you to respond to whatever life throws at you in a way that is productive and meaningful and not destructive.
And with your practice, what sort of people have you seen over the years with different sort of health problems that they've presented with, and what have they seen? I
think I have a lot of busy mums.
You've got a lot of testimonials on your website, from mums.
A lot of busy mums, because it means that they can cope with the stresses that are thrown at them. I have a lot of business executives. And the nice thing is that they can be flying all over the world. You can fly from Seattle to London. You can fly from China to London, and you don't necessarily have to have jet lag if you follow what I call my jet lag routines. So it gives people the ability to fly all over the world, operate in a business room with all of their faculties and not feel jaded from the traveling, or not feel jaded from the fact that they were up half the night last night because they had to perform at some executive function. So a lot of, CEOs and business people absolutely love it. They call it their limitless course. I have a lot of children on it, university kids who are studying for their degrees, a a lot of spectrum children who are on it because it enables them to go forward in a way that they were unable to do. But lots of chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, ME. And then, of course, you've got your older age people who are just on the beginnings of Alzheimer's and dementia. Carnosine is incredibly neuroprotective. So, if you've got your neurotransmitters being protective and those connections are being made correctly, then again, the quality of your older years is better. And it's nice to be able to get your words out, to be able to remember the people in front of you and not be frustrated because you're missing stuff. And again, I've had one couple, they came to me, I'll never forget them. They were in their very late 80s. I think he was about 88 and she was about 84. And they couldn't remember their grandchildren's names and they were getting quite muddled. And we've put them on our mitochondrial rescue protocols. And within 3 or 4 months, they were beginning to remember the names of their grandchildren. They absolutely knew the names of their children. And on it today in their 90s.
Amazing.
So much you can do.
That's so inspiring because I keep hearing through friends that their father or grandfather is developing dementia and Alzheimer's, and this is very inspiring because they obviously go to a doctor and they get put on these drugs that really don't work, and there's not even decent science to say that they do much. Whereas, as you said, this stuff is being studied, and carnosine, from when I did some research, it's been around at least for 100 years, and the Russians discovered it, and I think it was used, wasn't it by the military? It was like something they had discovered and they kept it sort of secret for a while, and I think it's been connected to the space programs as well. Like, could you maybe talk about the heart rate variability test? Because this is what I want people to know, is these supplements aren't just working because we're saying it. We have a test that actually shows that they're working, because you go back to see your practitioner and they test you as time goes by, and you can see the parameters on the test improve, which I think that's always what impressed me with this, because I had never heard of a protocol where you get testing like this done to back up what it's actually doing to the brain, the heart, the hormones, the entire system. So should we maybe talk about the test and who discovered it and why it was used?
I'm going to pick up on one point first, which I've completely forgotten. That's all right. I'll crack on with the test side of things. I think you said in your early days you had been tested by ECGs, you had been tested by all sorts of things, and everything came back normal. I'm going to tell you why our test is very different. So if you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or anything like that, that is measuring heart rate variability in a very, very basic form, and it's taking information. When you have a heart rate variability, you have kind of a blip and then a blip, and it's measuring the information between the two R peaks. And that's not where most of the information is. The information is in the blip and what we call the QRS code. So a Fitbit or Apple Watch is taking information at probably about 70 cycles per second. If you had a home device, heart rate variability, which there are lots of them around, it's going to take information at about 300 or 400 cycles per second. If you took a device that was a professional device in a hospital or in a doctor's surgery, which is the norm, you've got good actionable data there. This is what most people expect. And you're going to get information about 900 to 1,000 cycles per second. And that's the norm. The heart rate variability device that we use is called a Picard 2.5. It comes from Russia. Its provenance comes from, it was created in the 90s, but it came through Roman Baevsky working with the people who were involved with getting Yuri Gagarin into space. So all the mathematical equations go back to the 1960s. The power of this machine, remember I said in a doctor's surgery, it's going to be measured about 900 to 1,000 cycles per second. What we are measuring is 16,000 cycles per second, which is interpolated down to 2,000 cycles per second. So we have a great deal more bandwidth. So what the doctors were measuring for you was all they had available. What I'm using has got, people write PhDs on it in Russia. So the bandwidth is huge, and we have information in here that you're not going to get on a normal heart rate variability machine. For example, you don't normally get the hypothalamus on a heart rate variability machine. So we can look at, on this machine, how much power has somebody got, where is it going, and what is it doing? So we're measuring how much power is in the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, it's your heart rate and cellular oxygen. We're measuring the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your resting, digesting, and healing. But we're measuring the VLF. Your VLF is your limbic system. So we can see power in those areas. So we're looking at the brain. But the hypothalamus is saying, how much power have we got, or how are we able to run all of the resources in the body? And if the brain is under stress trying to do this, and you're in your head, it makes it very hard for the body to heal. And so for some people, when you will describe people as they're in their head, because they've got no idea of anything going from their chin down. They're in their head, they're stressed, and therefore everything in the body tends to shut down because you don't have the bandwidth or the resources. So the hypothalamus is there to say, with the power we've got, we can do this, we can do that, we can patch this, we can oil this, we can repair this. Or I'm going to do a bodged job on this area, I'm going to patch this area, and I can't look at what's behind me because I don't have the power to run it. And you end up running around in your head trying to spin 10 plates with one hand tied behind you. And this is now measurable. And this is why the test is so important, because people will go in and go, I feel horrible, this, that, and the other. And you'll give them the supplements, and then they'll come back 2 months later and we'll measure again. They go, yeah, I think something's changing, but I'm not quite sure. This stuff is really, really deep. You can't feel the changes in the body until it percolates to the top, which is what we express. On the test, we can go, like I could with my son. Suddenly the brain's turned on. He can't tell me that. He can't feel it, but we can perhaps see it in his behavior. So the test means that it's not subjective any longer. We're not trying to feel changes. We can actually measure them, and they can be very, very deep changes. And one of those changes is we want everybody to have around a figure of 2,000 for power. And if you've only got 200, you're barely functioning. But then if I move you to 800, you feel a bit better. But how do you quantify that? How do you quantify that your metabolic processes are actually functioning better? Can you feel that? Well, you probably can't. But it will percolate up to the surface later on as you stay on it a bit longer and you gather more power. And then suddenly everything starts to change. But the body takes time, and it takes probably, with the mitochondrial protocols, a month to heal every year you've been out of sorts. People obviously have been ill for 10, 15 years. So I go, this isn't going to happen in 2 or 3 months, hon. This is going to be, over the next year, 18 months. But you will notice a huge difference probably within about 2 months.
That's exactly my journey, because I was sick from, I would say, even in my infant years. I wasn't a thriving child, really. And then I had so much stress where I was constantly crying and upset every day. So for me, I didn't feel hugely better for quite a while, and that makes sense because I was ill for so long. And sometimes for people, they just need to be told to give it time. You can't expect to feel perfect overnight, because as you say, there's a lot of damage that needs to be repaired. And over the years, I've taken many of my younger friends at the time, because my journey with this spans about 10 years. Every friend that I took, they were in their early 20s, and all of them had a lack of power. And the doctor would say, yep, you're already showing signs of stress in the body. And we are all under so much stress from different areas. I mean, the Wi-Fi stress is just off the charts with what that does for people. Obviously, toxins and metals and things. And then just the stress of how we're all coping with our emotions. And what I've seen is, kids that have grown up with a lot of unhappiness tend to have pretty dire results on the test, as it was for me. Because if you're always upset, and when you think about stress, and if someone upsets you, you get sweaty and you shake and you feel it in your head because it hurts. You can feel it in your heart as well, and you can feel it in your gut. So it's like all of your major systems are just under a massive amount of stress. And if you're having that constantly, then the damage is going to get worse and worse the longer you go without this power to heal. So even though it's like a really common word that people use, that everyone's stressed today, it's not a word, or it's not a subject that should just be seen as normal, because the longer you leave this stress effect, the worse it is for your long-term health.
I think you said something super important there. People think about stress being in their head. They don't think about the stress on their body. And it's a bit like, if you don't have enough resources, you have to allow some things to go. You have to allow some things to be put on the back burner. And if you don't pay attention to those things on the back burner, they decay and they break down, and then they create more labels. And this is what this is about. It's taking those things off the back burner, dusting them off and going, we won the lottery. We've got power now. We can, get it all going again. And this is what makes me so very excited. The other thing is, for the people who have chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, they keep going to the doctor, who goes, done your blood tests, you're fine. I've tested you for this, that, and the other, you're fine. It's in your head, go and see a shrink, which has to be about the most insulting thing you can say to somebody. They're clearly there because there's a problem. And the reason the tests keep coming back, measuring that there's nothing wrong, is because they have what we call receptor damage. And receptor damage, your receptors feed into your autonomic nervous system, telling the body that you're hot, you're cold, you need to run, somebody's dropped dead gorgeous over there, you hate this food, you love this food. Everything that goes on in your body is a receptor giving you that information. But if your receptors are blocked, broken, and damaged, then the body doesn't know whether it's Arthur or Martha. And so for a lot of these people who come back with tests constantly going, you're fine, it's because the receptors are not working and they are unable to feed back that information. And the most beautiful thing about the mitochondrial rescue protocols is the carnosine is able to repair those receptors, usually within about 6 or 8 weeks, and suddenly they are able to feel things in a way. And unfortunately, they will feel some of the things that have gone wrong. They'll feel the inflammation in their body, but they will be able to get up off the floor. They'll be able to lay the table, empty the dishwasher, change the sheets, go for kids, because now the body can see that it's got a problem. And it's like receptors turn on, and the body goes, crikey, I didn't realize we're in this pickle. Right, we've got some power now. You fix this, you patch this, you oil this, you repair that. And so now the body can respond. And when they then go and have the tests, then they come back horrible, because the body is now able to say, actually, yes, we've got a list as long as your arm of things to do, but we can see it now and we can get after it. And this is when these people start to recover, and it's very, very rewarding and exciting.
Now, one of the things that blew me away by this protocol is what it can do for people with epilepsy. So I don't know, would you like to speak about that with what you've seen?
Yes, it creates like a histamine reservoir in the brain, so it can dampen down that electrical impulse. And it doesn't work for all of them, but it does work for a lot of them. And so it can, calm down those excitable receptors so that things are less likely to be triggered. And you have to work out the dose. We wouldn't tell anybody to come off their medication. Find that as we get the right dose, there is less likelihood of epileptic attacks. But diet has a huge role to play in that, and there are an awful lot of other things. We cannot negate that. It's not a one thing fixes all, but it can certainly help a lot, and has shown great promise with a lot of families. Yeah,
one of my friends had severe epilepsy. I even saw her have a fit in front of me one day that ended in a terrible accident, which I won't go into because it's awful. But after about being on the supplements for a year, her seizures stopped. She was still on a tiny bit of her, I think it was, is it Tegretol? Is an epileptic drug. She was still on that a little bit. But yeah, she didn't have any seizures ever again. And this was someone that would have these severe seizures now and again, and then every day she'd have little tiny seizures. So I saw what happened to a friend from that, which was just another miracle that I've witnessed over the years. So what else should we talk about?
I think really, we're both mums, we're both busy people, and everybody deserves the right to have a full active life, to participate in life, to be able to respond to all the situations that life throws at us. And I think being able to take the stress off the body by giving it the resources and the power that it needs goes a long way. And you don't have to be ill to be mitochondrially challenged. It's just as we get older, we become that because we're living longer than we ever used to, and we have so much more stresses on our plate. So just giving the body an extra daily dose of power, if you like, so that it can regenerate all the nonsense that we created the previous day, that we can sleep better, that we have the faculties to respond to a quick quip across the table as opposed to being insulted by it. And we can, it changes so much in our day-to-day life, and you don't have to be ill to be on this stuff. It's a normal, this is like, I take vitamin C, I take zinc, I take all basic things, vitamin D3 especially, but this is just part of my daily routine so that I grow old disgracefully enjoying
enjoying, yeah, that's right. And I think you touched on before about sleep problems. So I learned, because I had terrible insomnia for such a long time, that I learned that you actually need good mitochondrial function to sleep well, and that most sleep disorders are linked to deficiency of the energy in the body. Because you wouldn't think that, would you? You'd think if you're tired you just fall asleep, but no, it's actually a process that requires energy.
You need power to sleep, and this is what most people don't realize, because when you sleep is when you're supposed to regenerate and repair the body. But if you haven't got the resources, so first of all, it takes a lot of power to knock you out. So that's the first thing. So in order to basically have a deep sleep, you have to have the power to knock everything out. That's the first thing. And having knocked you out, you then need a lot of power to regenerate the complete pickle you created from running around so much during the day, and running around with the children and going on a bicycle ride and trying to fix the roof and doing all of the stuff that we take for granted. We are ripping up our bodies all day long. The digestion, there's so much stuff that's going on. So the body has to say, lie down, we need to knock you out, which takes a lot of power. Then we need to find the power to regenerate the complete pickle you created throughout the day. If you haven't got the power, we can't do this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why so many people are waking up after sleep. If they do fall asleep all right, they'll wake up feeling still so tired. And it's because at night the body's not really regenerating properly. Yeah. So how young, what's the minimum age where a child can take this, for example?
I will give children as young as 2. They generally come to me because they can see they're on the spectrum and the first early signs. So I will give children as young as 2 the carnitine.
I've got both of my girls on it. I started with Lola because she's a lot like me. She's got sort of a thin disposition, and she gets fatigued quite easily. So, I worry about her health. But after putting her on the supplements, I noticed a big improvement with her very quickly, within about a few weeks, where I said to her, do you feel better from taking this stuff? And she said, yeah, I've got so much more energy now. So it's wonderful to see. And now I've got Maya on it as well, who's almost 5. And because of what I know about the environment that we're all living in, to me it makes sense that not only do we have ourselves on it, but if we put our children on it as well, then they're not going to be as affected by Wi-Fi and other stresses that they would be without it.
So that brings me on to a very, very big point. So we've done scientific testing, and we know that the carnosine will actually reduce nitric oxide in the body. Nitric oxide, if it's left uninhibited, will go on to create peroxynitrite, which is what is caused by that number that we're not allowed to say with a G on it. So peroxynitrite is created by that, and it is devastating the body because it breaks down every cellular process, every tissue, and it stays in the body for a huge amount of time, doing massive amounts of devastation. We know the carnosine stays in the body for up to 12 hours. So if somebody is taking carnosine in the morning and at the end of the day, then they've got pretty much a 24-hour additional protection against the effects of Wi-Fi and against the effects of peroxynitrite, because peroxynitrite cannot be formed if nitric oxide is basically being knocked out. And so this is huge. And children's bodies are very, the brain, their skulls are not created in the same way, their bones are not created in the same way, and therefore they absorb so much more Wi-Fi than we do, because they also have a much higher water content than we do and a much lower fat content because their brains are not fully developed. And so again, by protecting them, by giving them a little bit of carnosine morning and afternoon, then you are again helping to protect against the devastating effects of the Wi-Fi. And I mean, we need this. And I say to everybody, if you've got a Wi-Fi box, house, a router, please, please, please turn it off at night. It's so important.
And for those that have 5G in the local vicinity, I would say this is move. And if you can't, you need to get on this stuff.
Elon Musk gets his way and is shooting up all of these devices into the sky, there will be nowhere to hide from it. The only thing we can do to mitigate those effects is to make sure that we can take something on a daily basis that protects us. And we know from the clinical testing that if we can knock out nitric oxide from the body, then it is far, far more difficult.
And what I discovered through my sort of, I guess, health journey too is the effects of radiation from flying and what that has on people. And I've been put in touch with a group of families that share what's happened to their loved ones who used to be airline crew, and that the rate of disease and early death, cancers in airline staff are just insane. People have no idea what we're seeing with air crew. So taking this blend of carnosine and all the other mitochondrial ingredients in it has done some wonderful things for people that are constantly flying. So yeah,
because what most people don't realize is when you get above 10,000 feet, cosmic radiation of the sun starts to knock out your mitochondria. So last time I looked, commercial airliners were flying at 30 to 40,000 feet.
Wow.
So all of those pilots and those lovely ladies who show us where the exits are and bring our champagne to us or orange juice, they are up there for 8-9 hours on long haul. That is devastating on the body. If you knock out your mitochondria, you are knocking out your life force, because it is the mitochondria that runs all the resources in your body. And this is why after 10 or 15 years, airline stewards and those lovely people, they start to get chronic fatigue, they get fibromyalgia, they have lots of autoimmune disorders, they have heart attacks, because they no longer have the resources, and the body's just going, I simply don't have it. We have to let this system go, we have to let this system to go. And as I said before, that creates a massive amount of physical stress on the body that we internalize. We think it's emotional because that's how we respond to it, but actually it's the body breaking down because the cosmic radiation is knocking out your mitochondria when you fly.
And that, I mean, it's becoming sort of more widely known that there's something called aerotoxic syndrome, because that's gained a lot more attention in the press and people have been speaking out about it, because the engine oil will get through into the cabin, and people are breathing in those awful organophosphates. So carnosine actually has very strong chelation properties, doesn't it? So would you like to speak about that?
I can talk about the heavy metals. There's not been that I'm aware of any clinical testing on organophosphates, but I can tell you that it's phenomenal for mercury, lead, my brain's gone, but mercury, lead are the big ones. It doesn't, unfortunately, chelate aluminium.
Interesting.
But most of the other big metals, it will chelate, and it does it very gently, which is also super, super important. It also is shown, there's a lot of research showing that carnosine will help scavenge free radicals, and we want that to happen all the time. So, and again, the nice thing is about it's done gently, so you're not going to have the usual Herx reactions that a lot of other things bring on. So it's gentle, and that's what I like about it. But I can't talk about the phosphates because I don't think we've actually done the research on that.
Sure, yeah. What was I going to say? And are there any medications that people take that shouldn't take the carnosine blend, or is this something that can be given to absolutely anyone?
We're careful with people who are on blood thinners, so warfarin, Coumadin if you're in the States, but pretty much everything else is fine. We have a lot of people who are going through chemo who are on tamoxifen. They're able to take the mitochondrial products. There's very little that is contraindicated here.
And it's a good subject to briefly touch on, and obviously we can't really mention the C word too much, but I would go out on a limb and say if anyone's gone through standard C treatment, that because it is something that does have severe side effects, that you would want to start building up your mitochondria function after you've finished your treatment, because you want to make sure that whatever was wrong with the body in the first place, that you're helping address that so that you can start to properly heal. Did you want to maybe touch on what apoptosis is and why the mitochondria is?
Yeah, I want to follow on from the point you've made. So when people have been through very, very strong drugs like chemotherapy or they've had radiation, you're killing all of the bad bacteria, also killing all of the good bacteria. And the same thing is for can you hear me? I think I'm being told that our connection has been lost.
Oh no.
I'm going to continue talking.
Hear you. Let me just message Nat.
If you think about antibiotics, or you think about chemo, you knock out all the good bacteria as well as all of the bad bacteria. So you do not have the resources to come back. And a lot of people will get through cancer, and then unfortunately it comes around and visits again 3 to 5 years later. And a lot of that is because the body never had the resources to come back. And if we can give the body the potential to take back that power and to give it more energy to do that, then that is what we need to do.
So sorry everyone, Skype just suddenly died. So Lilius, should we see if anyone wants to ask any questions about what we just talked about? I think we'll have to wait a little bit for people to come back on.
I'm just looking at your previous FB feed of when it was live, and somebody has said that it's very sad that there are a lot of parents out there who are not in a social loop, and that they are not able to come across this information. It's very, very hard. A lot of this information, sadly, is put out through word of mouth. If you think about trading standards, they do a very good job, but they also say that nobody, from a practitioner point of view, is allowed to suggest anything may even benefit anybody. You're not even allowed to say a glass of water would help in case somebody chokes.
Wow.
So it's very, very hard to get this information out there. And if we put anything up on Facebook that implies, that's the other word, you're not allowed to imply any form of benefit. So sadly, we are left with just doing stuff like this, doing stuff through word of mouth. It's unless you are a pharmaceutical company, you're not allowed to say anything. And it's devastating because there's such a massive need out there of, parents, people who've been not well for a very, very long period of time, children, busy executives who are burnt out. It's really, really hard. And that's why I implore everybody, get on your social media, talk to your friends. If you know somebody who is not well, then please share this information with them, because as practitioners, we are longing to get this information out there. It is our life's work to help people. And it's very hard when our hands are tied to such a degree. And I mean, even with what's been going on politically at the moment, I know a lot of practitioners who've been talking about what's happening very currently. They've had, and trying to guide people in a better way. And their Facebook accounts have been taken down, their Twitter's been taken down, all of this stuff. And I'm not going to get political. But the moment we open our mouths and start saying stuff, it is stopped. So it's very, very hard. So thank you for that person who's written that comment. And yeah, it is sad that this information isn't out there. We're doing the best we can. But as an army of people out there, please, you know who the people are around you who are in desperate need of help. Please share this information.
Well, yeah. Do you think that we've covered everything?
I think so. I see if I can see the feed again.
What I wanted to say to everyone is, so the supplements, you can't purchase them off the internet because they're special supplements, and it's always wise to reach out to a practitioner such as Lilius, who can see you in person and do the heart rate variability test, or you can have a Zoom or Skype appointment as well. So yeah,
there's an army of practitioners out there. And if people go onto mitochondrialrescue.com, they can see other practitioners all around the country. I'm based in London and I'm in Somerset. I do stuff over Zoom, but there are other people who may be more local to you who would also be good. So Mitochondrial Rescue is what you need to look up. And there is a list there of practitioners who are able to help you. And
you're also helping to train health professionals and doctors in America, aren't you? So that's pretty big, and you should be very proud of that. Thank you. No, I am very excited about it. And what is very close to my heart is that we have more probably doctors and surgeons of cardiology working with us in America than we do over here, which just shows you just how powerful this is for people who have cardiovascular disorders. It's absolutely, it's life-changing and life-saving. That's right. And I'm so glad you've brought that up, because I wanted to ask you this before. But, sometimes people present to a mitochondrial practitioner with their heart in such a bad way that they're pretty much on the edge of could possibly have a heart attack at any minute. And what I discovered was that the carnosine can act so quickly that it can take someone out of that emergency state within a few hours of taking it. And am I right in saying that? I'll go further than that. So when I'm demonstrating this to practitioners, and they go, well, how quick does it take to do something in the body? So I will do a baseline heart rate variability test on them, and then I'll break our supplements under their tongue, give them some water, get them to hold it for a few minutes, and I will test them 20 minutes later, and I can tell you that their heart rate variability test will have a completely different reading. That's extraordinary. Wow. It takes minutes to get into the bloodstream. Wow. So if somebody's got serious heart issues, that if we give it to them under the tongue, we've done it with many, many patients, but we know that it will totally support that person and can be the difference between a cardiac event and not having one. And we've got the data to prove that. And what signs in someone's body? So for me, I knew something wasn't right with my heart because I would get these strange fluttery beats just out of nowhere that I just knew wasn't right. And when I speak to friends who are also suffering from stress, I tend to ask them that as well, just so I can kind of gauge, where they're at, if it's similar to how I was. Are there other symptoms that people will have that is pointing to their heart being a problem for them? I'm not a cardiologist, so I'm going to be careful on this ground here.
But I think most people, it's breathlessness. You can't walk upstairs. You can't walk up a normal hill. You may feel a tightness in the chest. You may, you'll be sweating across your top lip. I mean, there's so much. Anxiety is a big one because the body hasn't got the resources to run stuff. You may feel arrhythmias going on. So you might have a thump in your chest. So you might feel that extra heartbeat. You might just feel uncomfortable. Your heart might be racing. It might be going very slow. There's lots of erratic beats going on. I'm choosing my words carefully here. But cardiovascular stuff presents in so many ways. But you may find that it's just simply that you can't walk uphill like you used to.
Yeah.
It can be that you don't have, because your heart isn't able to pump around that cellular oxygen, you don't have the resources to run other systems in the body. And one of the things that most people don't realize is that your mitochondria take 75% of the oxygen that you breathe.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
You breathe mitochondria to give you the power to run your resources in the body. So we all think, the lungs are great for cellular oxygen. They are, but it's giving it predominantly to your mitochondria.
I've also read that, heavy metals can really affect the heart as well. Yeah, so would make sense why the carnosine would help with that too, because it will chelate some of the nastier ones out. Is there anything else we can cover?
I think one of the areas, we've covered a huge amount today, but let's also look at the elite people, the people who are the professional athletes. Carnosine is the greatest buffer of lactic acid in the body. So if you are somebody who's come out of exercise, you're ripping your muscles up every time that you exercise or you weightlift or you run, that takes time to recover. That takes resources. First of all, those individuals need to be hoovering up a lot more protein and calories than other people, but they also need to have the resources to repair those muscles and not have that lactic acid. And if they take these protocols before and after training, they will do more often personal bests, and they will have a much quicker regeneration and repair after that training. And and the other thing is the carnosine is WADA certified, so it's not going to, people who are professional athletes can use it. And there is actually one Olympic athlete we know at the moment who's currently using it, which is very great.
Wow. And that word you said before starts with W. That means it's not on the it's on a list where you can take it and you won't get in trouble for taking it. It's not a drug. Yeah.
World Authority for Drug, I'm not quite sure.
Athletes or something, yeah.
I should know, but I haven't got it off the top of my head at the moment. I need to take my carnosine.
Yeah, I haven't taken mine yet either. But the supplements is something that what was interesting for me to learn was in the beginning when I took them, I had to take a lot. And there's sort of 3 main ones, and I was taking up to about 6 carnosine a day. But what's interesting is when you start to improve and you have the test and it shows you're at that one level in the green range with all the parameters being in a healthy way, then sometimes you only need to take 2, which is 1 in the morning and 1 at night. So affordability wise, it can be something that is really not too expensive when you start to properly heal. And certainly for kids, you don't need to give them too much as well. So shall we talk about the cost of them and how many tablets are in a bottle? So
the carnosine, the Q10, and our sulforaphane, which supports people with cancer, they retail at £55 a pot.
That's good. And it's 120 capsules, isn't it?
There are 120 capsules in a pot. Most people on a maintenance dose, which is generally 2 carnosine and 1 Q10 a day. So for a month, they would get through 1 pot of carnosine, they'd get through half a pot of Q10. If you're a busy person who is running around a lot, expending a lot of energy, who maybe not particularly well, they may be on 3 carnosine and 2 Q10 twice a day, and therefore they'll get through a pot and a half of carnosine and a Q10 in a month. So but as you get better and you have more energy, you don't need, most people are on a pot of carnosine and half a pot of Q10 a month, which is very affordable. Just don't have one major brand of coffee a day, and you've covered it.
Yes, that's right. And
you make your choices what you spend your money on, and you have no life if you do not have your health.
And that's it. The long-term benefits of this is what's important to me, because when I was so ill, I asked the doctor what was wrong with me, and he basically said that my internal age and the way my organs were functioning was as if I was 80 years old, which is why people with chronic fatigue feel tired all the time. So this stuff, to me, with what I've learned, is the ultimate anti-aging supplement protocol. It's not necessarily about what you look like, but it's about the organs aging, because stress will cause them to age much quicker than they should. And that is not good, because it means that you'll develop things far too early. Am I right to say that?
Completely. And if you look at inflammation in the body, inflammation causes the body to break down. And that's because there's stress on the body. And if you look at the clinical research that's out there, a lot of the diabetes, the cardiac cases, all of these things and dementia, they're happening earlier and earlier and earlier. So what we would expect in people 70 or 80 is now happening in people who are 50 and 60. And the diseases that we look as old age diseases, they start 20 to 25 years before they present themselves. So you or I might think, we're pretty good and we're pretty healthy, but actually we are probably, 70% through present, as to where we're going to be in presenting. So that more you can look after yourself younger, then the likelihood of these things showing themselves up when you're older. But I mean, there's an extraordinary gentleman called Dr. Paul Clayton, and he presents beautiful research showing across the world all of the big labels are happening in people younger and younger. And you've got dementia occurring in people who are 30 and 40, and this is a tragedy. And diabetes happening much, much younger. It's a tragedy. Right.
And there's so many, first of all, there's so much money going into mitochondrial research, and it's not, like what we're talking about is not necessarily unheard of. There's a lot of science going into it, but it's all drug-based, which I think, how can a drug with side effects and toxic ingredients actually help to fix the root cause of healing? So I don't know where they're going to go with that. So lots of people today are being born with mitochondrial disorders, and also the methylation problem as well, as I think it's at least 50% of the population, which is really frightening, because it means they're going to have difficulties detoxing, and it's also linked to mood disorders as well. So would I be right in saying that people that have, and children that have that methylation issue, would be very wise to be on the carnosine supplement?
The carnosine isn't going to necessarily help with the methylation, but what it will do is because the methylation is the inability to detox, and the drains are generally blocked. So that you need something else to support. But if you can give the body the power to methylate, then that's different. So we're coming back down to labels. And then what I'm saying is methylation is a label. So it might be that label has been let go because the body doesn't have the power or the resources. So we're coming back to labels and power. Old paradigm versus new paradigm. So I'm great, and what I believe and what I've seen through my practice is just give the body the power and let's see what happens. And then if it needs further support in areas, absolutely, we're going to give it, but we're going to give the body the opportunity first of all to respond.
Makes so much sense. The first time I had that appointment and everything was explained to me, it was a real light bulb moment, and I finally had hope that something was going to work for me, because I'd been in such a right state. So in the first video, I've put all the links in for people to find you, as well as your Mitochondrial Rescue website. And there's also a link to a PowerPoint presentation that you've done that is all about all this, but in much greater detail. So yeah, I think it's probably a good place to finish. But thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry about the tech glitches.
That's right. But thank you for the opportunity. It's as always, it's an absolute pleasure to talk with you. And
ditto.
particularly when somebody who's come through it and has their own story and experience to share, that's so vitally important.
Yeah, I've been on this stuff for I think 10 years now, and I've had a few times in my life where I've stopped taking it, and yeah, I could definitely see things start to decline. So it's one of my main must-have everyday supplements, because I understand how it works and why we need it. So thank you for your time, and look forward to doing this again sometime.
That would be wonderful. And thank you, everybody, for finding time in your morning to listen to us. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.